Hey everybody, Arnaldo here, broadcasting from Fidelio's Frequency. Welcome to my channel. For the topic of this video, I took inspiration from a video that I saw on another channel, another vinyl community YouTube channel, and that would be Tom Pardo's channel, and the name of the channel is Sea of Tranquility. A few weeks ago, or maybe 10 days ago, he posted a video in which he goes through the 20 records that changed his life. I thought it was quite inspiring, not only because of the reasons behind his picks, but also for the selections themselves. And a few other channels have already chimed in creating their own content on this topic, namely Melinda Murphy, Mazzy, Norman Maslov, Rob Walker, Let the Music Play. I think I also saw Noble Records, Dylan from Noble Records posted his video. And they're all great to watch, very inspiring, excellent videos. So I figured I'd give this one a shot myself and see where it goes. So I chose 10 records, and there's a bonus one at the end. And these are the records that either because they marked an important time of my life, have left a specific memory of a time in my life, or for personal reasons, and records that may have marked a certain changing point or pivotal moment within my journey through music. So I'm going to start off with probably the earliest memory that I have of buying a record. Now, I didn't really buy it because I was only 6 at the time, and I'll tell you the whole story behind it. I grew up in Philadelphia, and on the weekends, either Saturday or Sunday, my father would take me and my brother for a drive over to New Jersey. And I think the name of the town was Pennsauken, or at least that was the name of this like strip mall where he would go and do shopping at the Italian store for Italian specialty foods. And in this kind of strip mall, there were other stores that were internally kind of attached all to one another. There was a record store, and I'm talking 70s, early to mid 70s, when it was perfectly fine that your kids could wander off to another store while you were shopping at the store next door. I don't think that happens nowadays, especially if one child is 6 and the other one is almost 10 years old. So we would wander off to the record store that was close by. And my brother, who was, the person who was more into music, he was 10, the store had a sign, or at least it was a printout, of the Billboard chart for the week. And he would take a look at the Billboard chart and decide what record we were to ask my father to buy for us. And it was always a 45. Except for, I guess I had gotten enough of his picks, which were always great, by the way, that I said, I really want to pick a record this time. And my brother was like, okay, what do you want? I was inspired after seeing this group perform. I think it was on the Sonny and Cher show. They were performing with a toy, like tin robot that was dancing along with the choreography. And you probably know who I'm talking about because I've seen this video a few other times on YouTube. It's still around. And I'm talking about the Jackson 5, and the song is Dancing Machine. And I still have the 45 that I bought or was purchased by my dad. I think it was 1973 or 1974. That's what the label says here. And in the original, all beat up, non-picture, just plain white sleeve. As you can see, it's mostly falling apart. But my brother, who had the better handwriting, actually had very good handwriting, he wrote the name of the record on it, so he could mark it with my name. And let me show you the inside. Here it is with the fantastic Motown label. And I don't know, this has a very sentimental value for me, and it kind of marks the beginning of my craziness in buying records, for my craziness for vinyl. So I thought this is a very important record for me, and it needed to be marked as a milestone. So Fast forward a couple of years to when I was 8, and I think this is the first album that I had my parents buy me. And when you were 8 years old, uh, anywhere between 8 and 12 years old, and you were living in the United States during the mid to late 70s, there is a very high probability that you were into this band, and or at least you had one of their records. And I'm talking about Kiss. And the first Kiss record that I bought, yes, it's actually this copy. You can see all the ring wear from like almost 48 years of existence or in my possession. The first Kiss record, this is the record that started the craze for me. I was all in. I was all about Kiss. The dolls, the trading cards, anything, the magazines, the posters, anything I can get my hands on, the pins, the belt buckle, a mirror. I don't know how many of their merchandise I bought, and that's all I would listen to, was mostly Kiss. All of my allowance went towards Kiss, buying records, or any birthday or Christmas or any occasion that my parents I could ask for a record would be for a Kiss record. So I want to say all the way up until 1981, I was all about Kiss. I want to say maybe after 1980, a little bit less, maybe 1979, 80, a little bit less. But this album meant everything. I would just stare at this album cover and be marveled by the costumes, the makeup. And this is actually, this is probably an anomaly amongst all of the Kiss discography. It has an atmosphere of its own, a mood of its own. It's produced by Bob Ezrin, who they worked with only much later in their career. I think The Elder was also produced by Bob Ezrin, and Revenge. But nothing sounds like Destroyer. I'm sure you're all familiar with Detroit Rock City, God of Thunder, Beth, which suddenly became a hit on radio, and they were also featured on a Halloween special singing Beth. But yeah, this record opened the door for me to the craziness and, you know, the obsession for Kiss. So I had to mark this one. So if I was all about Kiss, my brother, on the other hand, was all about Queen. And he had all the Queen albums up until 1978, the period that I'm about to talk to you about. And I had all the Kiss albums. And I have to say, this one has a special place in my heart because of the time that it was not even current at the time. The album came out in 1975, I think, but I really got into it during this time in 1978, during our move from Philadelphia to Italy. And the house was all packed up. Mostly our furniture had been shipped, and all of our belongings had already been packed up. All the records were packed up. And my brother, I guess, taped a couple of albums that he really liked and that he wanted to listen to on a tape recorder. And this is one of them, and A Night at the Opera. The reason why I say I'm particularly fond of this album, apart from the fact that I think it's probably their best in terms of production, songwriting, but because I was very sad that I was saying goodbye to my childhood, my neighborhood friends, family that was still here. And I was moving to a place where, totally different country, where I had to make new friends, and I didn't know what was going to come of it. So I had been there, I had visited quite a few times, but still, realizing that you won't hang out and you won't see your best friends for who knows how long was kind of very sad for me. So this album allowed me, I sat in, I think it was my mom's room, and I was playing this, and I just forgot about everything. I just purely enjoyed it. For me, it's a very visual album. It has a lot of, I don't know, I guess it has to do with the production and the lyrics of some of their songs that, um, especially the Prophet song and Bohemian Rhapsody, Death on Two Legs. All of these songs for me were very visual, and maybe because Freddie Mercury's voice and delivery was so out there and so, um, I want to say flamboyant. It's a term that I didn't even know back then, but um, yeah, this album is important to me because it allowed me to forget about the challenges that were waiting for me at 10 years old, and to forget about the sadness surrounding my move. So I talked about kind of personal stuff, uh, that albums and records that are attached to very personal memories. This one is all about the music. Um, I bought the next record in 1981. It had been out for, I guess, 10 years by then at that point, or close to it. And 1980, John Lennon died. He was shot in December of 1980. And I was, I think, 12. I started to have a lot more interest in learning about the Beatles. Even though I knew their music, I didn't have any of their records. And the first, actually, apart from my brother, again, who bought a Wings album, I think it was Wings at the Speed of Sound. That was my first experience in listening to Beatles music. Then I bought Double Fantasy, but my brother's friend, or schoolmate, was selling off some of his records, and he no longer wanted Beatles 1962 to 1966. And I was like, I'll take it. So I think it was like the equivalent of maybe $10. And when I played this record, I think I went, oh, wow, they sing this song too. I knew some of the songs going into it, but others, I didn't know the title, and I didn't know it was the Beatles. So I was playing this and I was amazed that, oh, I know this song. I had heard these songs over and over on TV, on radio, probably sung by other artists, but didn't know they were the Beatles. So for me, this album was a discovery, my first Beatles record, and that's why it's special. And also because it's got some fantastic songs on it. So yeah, this for me kind of marked, I think, the shift in my let's call it musical awakening, right? When I bought this first Beatles record. So the next few records are going to be records that were very important for my music journey. We already saw the Beatles. The next one, totally different genre, and courtesy of my brother, who bought this record. This is not his copy. I got my own. And I didn't know much about them other than seeing one or two videos on TV. It was the era, 1982. It's when you'd start to see videos and video music channels. And there was this one channel that I would watch that showed their videos. And I wasn't really familiar with them until my brother bought the record off the most important song, which is Don't You Want Me? And I'm talking about Human League and their, can we call it their masterpiece? Even though one of my favorite is probably the subsequent one. But this is kind of like the blueprint for electronic pop music. And I think it came out in 1981. We may have gotten it around 82, beginning of 82. And this is another record where I was totally engrossed by the music. Totally different music than I had been listening to up until then. I only listened to like rock music, mostly rock or pop music. This is pure electronic pop music And it was totally new for me. And I was actually surprised when I was flipping through my shelves. I was like, you know what? This is a very important album, and this really had an impact on me. So there, Human League. Another important record in 1982, which changed the way I listened to music. I was, by 1982, pretty much past Kiss at this point. I was exploring different genres. I had discovered the Beatles, like I said, Human League in the previous selection that I showed you. This one taught me about the craft of songwriting, of musicianship, of production. It was for me so artistic, and it changed the way I listen to music. I think I've said enough. Now I can show you the record. Roxy Music's Avalon. That's all I'm going to say. And now moving on to something that affected me, yeah, musically, but also from a personal point of view as well. This record, probably not many of you know. You probably know the artist, but this is an offshoot, a side project by this artist. I'm talking about Mark Almond from Soft Cell. He had a side project that he worked on for only 2 albums, and it was parallel to Soft Cell. So I bought this record. It was the second one that he released under the moniker Mark and the Mambas, and it is my favorite. It ranks amongst probably my all-time favorite records. I listened to this record over and over and over again for many years, and I guess I can show it to you now. It's called Torment and Toreros, and it is by Mark and the Mambas. Now, this is a project that is totally different from what you would have expected at the time from Mark Almond. His band is made up of string section, brilliant pianist Annie Hogan, Matt Johnson from The also plays on this record. He had a more prominent role in Mark and the Mambas on the first Mark and the Mambas record. On this one, he is only present on a few tracks. Steve Severin from Susie and the Banshees also is on one of the tracks. And when I first heard this record, I did not know what to make of it. It blew me away. I was not expecting the wild stuff that is on this album. You could see that there's a flamenco dancer here, and here's Mark Almond in the back, also as a toreador or torero. I'll show you the inside, and their look was actually quite goth. So if you see here, and especially in this picture, is him with all the mambas. And cabaret at times. Scott Walker comes to mind. Plenty of strings. Mark sings in a way that you will never hear him sing again on any album. I think vocally, this is probably his best album. Not only, but this is his best album in terms of songwriting, in terms of production. This album is just, for me, again, it opened my mind to a different sensibility towards music. It's not for everyone. Definitely is for me. It definitely changed the way I listen to music and gave me a different sensibility towards appreciating a lot of other music. Scott Walker, Jacques Brel, more theatrical type of music. So that's Mark and the Mambas, Torment and Toreros. And of course, in 1984, and I also just made a video celebrating the 40th anniversary from the release of the debut album by The Smiths. If you want to know more about this album, you can check out that other video of mine on my channel. All I want to say is this album was so important. Again, another album that introduced me to a different way of listening to music and to appreciate the craft of lyric writing. No one writes lyrics. No one has written lyrics like Morrissey up until The Smiths. And since then, no one has actually really equaled the wit and the, let's call it, literacy that Morrissey infused all of his lyrics with. So you all know I'm a big Smiths fan. Not my favorite Smiths record, but this is the one that changed everything for me. This is the one that introduced me to the Smiths, and this is the one that probably taught me how to listen to not only their music, but a whole other series of artists. So the Smiths debut album. And now I want to touch upon an album that came into my life during a very, very difficult time, probably the most difficult time of my life. And this album helped me get through it. Kind of like when I talked about Queen's Night at the Opera, that offered a distraction from my move and the sadness of leaving my childhood home and my childhood friends. This other album provided solace, comfort, during the most, probably like I said, one of the most difficult times of my life. It was released probably a month after the death of my father, and a very difficult time for me and my family. And I'm so glad that this album came into my life at that time, because listening to the album, again, it helped me grieve. It has a unique beauty, stillness that I feel when I listen to this album. I don't listen to it very often lately. I'll listen to it usually maybe a couple times a year, and almost always during the fall or the winter months, because that's when it came out. It came out in October of 1987. And the artwork and the mood of the music is just, for me, it's meant to provide warmth in those cold and chilly months. And because it was a very cold and dark time of my life, that it also appeared. And I think I've built this album up quite a bit to tell you that David Sylvian, one of my all-time favorite artists, and Secrets of the Beehive, it's a very special album to me. For sure, my favorite of his, but I don't want to talk too much about what kind of music it is. If you like David Sylvian, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't think he's made another album like this. And yeah, I don't want to add anything else. Maybe you should listen to it for yourself and enjoy the beauty of this album, just like the beauty of the artwork, which done by the same team that does the artwork for all of the 4AD records, that is 23 Envelope. Thank you. Secrets of the Beehive. And now another album that helped me through a difficult time, and this was the album that kind of was the soundtrack to a breakup. A long breakup of a long-term relationship that lasted, the breakup I think lasted way too long than it should have. And in any case, thank you to Anthony and the Johnsons. I got through it. I Am a Bird Now came out at the beginning of January. It was January of 2005. And their second album, I don't want to call it commercial breakthrough, but definitely their breakthrough to a larger audience, featured on the top lists of many music publications that year. It won the Mercury Prize and is today my favorite album by Anthony and the Johnsons. I couldn't listen to this album after the breakup for a few years. I just didn't want to have to bring back those memories of those difficult times, but now I fully am able to enjoy it again. Actually, for quite some time, I am fully able to enjoy it again. But if you haven't enjoyed it, you should. Lou Reed is on here on one song, Fistful of Love. I think he plays guitar and he also duets with him. He has a spoken intro. Boy George does a proper duet on a ballad. I want to say it is ballad. You Are My Sister. And Rufus Wainwright is featured as the main vocalist on another track, What Can I Do? But throughout, this is a beautiful album. Candy, darling on the album cover. The album cover is shot by Peter Hujar, I think it is. And yeah, very important album for me. I Am a Bird Now, Anthony and the Johnsons. So winding down, we're almost at the end. Record number 10 is a record that I haven't listened to as much as any of the other records. It's probably one of the records in my collection that, although I love the record to pieces, I haven't listened to as much because it is such an intense record. Still a very emotional record for me to listen to 8 years after it was released. And I'm talking about the last record by David Bowie, Black Star. It was released on January 8th of 2016, that Friday. And throughout the weekend, I listened to the album a few times and I loved it. So looking forward to hearing it. And on the morning of Monday, January 10th, 2016, I learned that David Bowie had died. And it came as a shock to me and probably the entire world. David Bowie had not disclosed that he was terminally ill with liver cancer. And during that time, in the last year of his life, he wrote his swan song, considered probably it ranks amongst one of his finest albums ever. And that morning, on my way to work, in commuting in the subway, I listened to this album and I couldn't help but cry because the lyrics took on a totally different meaning. And I was never able to listen to this album the same way I enjoyed it the first few days that it came out. And yeah, I hope I can listen to this one more often. Beautiful work by David Bowie, Black Star. So I didn't want to end this video on a sad note. So I'm going to show you my 11th record. And this is my go-to record whenever I have a really challenging day, whenever I am very upset about something, whenever I'm in a really bad mood. I put this record on and it's like has a Zen effect on me. The calm that overcomes me I really can't describe it. I'm sure you all have one of those records that just allows you to refocus and bring serenity back into your life. I've spoken about this record in depth. Actually, it was my very first video on my YouTube channel. I think I called it something like Records About Emotion. And yes, for me, this record is all about emotion. Apart from the beauty, the songwriting, the production, everything about this album for me screams 5 stars. And you probably guessed it by now if you're a fan of my site. of my channel, talking about the Blue Nile, Hats. This is my go-to album. This is the album that brings Serenity back. And this is an album that I think everyone should own. And I hope you gave this a listen over the last year after I recommended it on my channel. If you haven't, please listen to this album, Hats by the Blue Nile, Scottish trio headed by Paul Buchanan. Amazing music and timeless for me. I still feel like I'm back in 1989 when I listen to this, but it's so current for me even today. So I'm going to end with this one, another record that has amazing memories that are always ongoing, and that's Hats by the Blue Nile. Those were the 10 plus 1 records that changed my life. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.